We will get. TV 13. You can go ahead and start the meeting. So welcome back, everyone. I believe we have 3 members of CBAC currently with us, and there should be a couple others joining here, hopefully in the coming minutes. I do want to get started here at a decent hour. Be respectful of everyone's time. Again, we do have Chief Trey Mayo with us, as well as several of his staff to discuss a few things. And Chief is going to be sharing a presentation. So first thing on the agenda, other than a welcome, was to allow Chief to get into that so that they can kind of get through the presentation, let them do their thing, and then we can do administrative minutia after that if we need to. Chief, I will turn it over to you, and I will let you introduce the folks that you have in the room. I'm not sure that every one of them were in one of the previous meetings, so to that end, if you just kind of want to go around and let the CBAC know who is here with you, and then you can begin sharing your presentation as you see fit.
Okay, thanks, Scott, and good morning, everybody. Good to see you again. Joining us this morning, a couple of them I think you've seen in previous presentations, but Deputy Chief Jerry Hardison is here. He's the Deputy Chief of Operations. He has the operations branch, logistics, and training in his purview. Deputy Chief Chaz Browning is here. He is the Deputy Chief of Life Safety, so he has inspectors, code enforcement, fire investigation, plan review, public education. Those things live on his side of the house. Assistant Chief Daryl Sawyer is here. He is the Assistant Chief of Logistics, and Assistant Chief Bobby Wade is also on the call. He is the Operations Assistant Chief. And I'm going to share my screen. This, you'll see a PowerPoint that looks relatively similar to what you have seen in the past. All right, everybody sees that okay?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks.
Yes.
So far we have given kind of an overview of the fire department, and then we talked about logistics, and we talked about the safety and training branch. Today we're going to talk about the fire and life safety branch and the operations branch. You all remember I'm not a slide reader, but I think it's important to note that we have not added any. So Winston-Salem Fire Department was a relatively innovative agency 40 or 50 years ago. When we hired our first, back then they called them fire and life safety educator. Today we call them a risk reduction specialist. But when we hired that position in 1980, that was on the cutting edge. Unfortunately, in 40 years, we've not hired any more of them. And you see how much the city has grown, both in square mileage and in population. We had a consultant here in 2020, and part of their assessment of the fire department was that we increase our risk reduction staffing to 4, and we have not done that. And that's now almost 4 years ago. This one person who is our risk reduction specialist is responsible for all of the stuff you see here. And there are a lot of abbreviations that Don't mean anything to most folks on the call, but in that last bullet, it is a lot. And we get more complaints about the risk reduction specialists' lack of response to various requests and presentations and answering phone calls and responding to emails, et cetera, than probably everybody else in the fire department combined. And it is simply because that person does not have time to do all the things that she does and be a slave to email and voicemails and all of the things that people are expecting her to do, responding to citizen requests that come through on our website. It just is way more than one person could ever think about attempting to do with any sort of efficiency. We are short on the number of inspectors we need in the life safety branch to fulfill our obligation as dictated by the state of North Carolina. As I'm sure most of you know, municipalities in North Carolina are creatures of the state. We do what the state says, and the state says that you have to inspect all the commercial buildings in your jurisdiction on a routine schedule. And we have added, since this would be current to about September 30th of last year. So since January 1st of 2021, we have added almost 700 inspections, no new positions. We were already behind, and you see as of September 30th that we were over 2,000 inspections behind what the state says we are supposed to be doing. And it is it's simply because we don't have enough staff to be able to adhere to the state schedule. There are, in addition to that 2,137 you see there in the second bullet, there are over 1,350 R2 inspections. So an R2 inspection, that's a residential inspection. That are the where you go into an apartment complex, and there may be 8 or 10 buildings in that apartment complex, and one person might own 2 or 3 of the buildings, and another person owns 2 or 3 of the buildings, and another person owns 1 of the buildings, and another person owns 4 of the buildings. That sort of arrangement, and there are over 1,350 of those inspections that have never been conducted ever. And though we don't have any jurisdiction inside those 1 and 2 family residential dwelling units, but we do have jurisdiction on balconies, decks, stairwells, common areas, those sorts of things. And we had Chief Browning will have to remind me, or Chief Wade, it's been about 2 years ago, we had a multi-fatality fire in one of these R2 or one of these R2 buildings that had never been inspected. Now, the fire started inside the residential living space, but that's where we would not have gone. But we do have fires in these occupancies where we are not doing any inspections. Moving to the operations branch. So this is where about 90% of our resources are, both financial, personnel, equipment, apparatus, et cetera. And over the years, for about the past 20 years, various consultants and organizations have come in and looked at us through various tools, and all of them have said we are understaffed. One of the metrics that I look at is I survey our peer departments in the state, and I try to keep it so that we can draw an apples to apples comparison. And I say, tell me how many engine companies and ladder companies you have in service, and tell me what your authorized staffing number is to put firefighters on those fire trucks and make them go out the door and do the things that they do every day. And when you look at the average of our peers compared to us, we are 1/2 authorized position per company in service short, which for us means 13 people per day. Incidentally, 13 people is at the 90th percentile about what we would hire back in overtime staffing to fill vacancies every day. So that number is just not something arbitrary. I mean, it's a real number that stands the test. One thing that is kind of a sort of an opportunity cost, if you will, of not having capacity to absorb vacancies, about having people moving around all the time, having the term I use here is patchwork crews. So engine one today, running out of the Marshall Street station, it might have an engineer who's assigned to engine one, and a captain who's working overtime from another platoon, and 2 firefighters who have floated in from Station 4 and Station 6 to staff that engine downtown. So there's minimal opportunity to build a team and to develop the concept that comes with teamwork, when every day when you show up to work, you don't know who you're going to have as the leader of that crew. And unfortunately, we realized the ramifications of that a few months ago, and I'm going to show you a video from back in October where we had patchwork crews working. These folks here are not assigned together. They are assigned to an engine, but they are doing what would be considered ladder company work. They are not trained to do ladder company work. And we are fortunate that we do not have either 2 dead or 2 paralyzed firefighters. If they had been facing in the other direction and had seen this coming, this would be a much different incident. These firefighters were taken to the hospital, fortunately, and treated and released. But again, if they had been facing the other direction and had seen this coming, this would have been a different event. This was a masonry wall, brick and concrete, that fell on these 2 firefighters operating in a situation as I described, patchwork crews doing work that they're not necessarily trained for. And this is one of the ramifications of just chronic understaffing across the city for years. Continuing on with the operations branch, we have made several changes to the way personnel earn and bank leave since July 1st, 2015. Leave rates have gone up. We have added holidays. We have allowed personnel to bank more time than they traditionally have been able to do. We have added 12 weeks of parental leave, and we have not increased staffing to compensate for this. I don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter to me if city wants to let 100 people off a day, it tickles me to death, but somebody's got to be riding the fire trucks. And we have not adjusted for that. And you can see now that in our operations branch, which is about 350 people, they hold in their leave banks almost 1.4 million hours of various types of leave. That's about 4,000 hours of leave per person. And that is not a sustainable leave model with our current level of staffing. I want to talk a little bit about Fire Station 7. So we have traditionally, if you can see my cursor on the screen moving around, this is the territory right here served by Fire Station 7 that sits at the corner of Country Club Road and Arbor Road. There is not a suppression apparatus in this fire station. In other words, there is not a pumper in there. All there is a rescue truck. No fire control capability beyond a fire extinguisher. No ability, limited ability to do anything. I mean, their specialty is, so they can answer medical calls, and their specialty is technical rescue, getting people off of cell towers, getting window washers off the side of buildings, getting people out of rail cars, getting people out of trenches, removing people out of wrecked cars. That's their bread and butter. Their bread and butter is not addressing house fires because they have no suppression capability. We have traditionally shown the map of our station coverage area, and we show Fire Station 7 on the map. But when you take it off the map, recognizing that there is not an engine in that station, you very clearly see to the casual observer, there is a huge hole in the coverage area right here for fire suppression capability. And this is the engine that would answer back into the west side of downtown. It's answering down with the engine that comes off Academy Street to the hospitals, to Haynes Mall. This engine, so some engines are, there's a greater or lesser effect when you take them out of service, depending on where they're located. But this engine has clean access to Stratford Road, to Country Club Road, and most importantly to 421, running east and west back through the center of Winston-Salem. It is a critical engine to have in service. This engine, on the initial alarm to a building fire, answers all the way to Pofftown. That is how critical this engine is, and how well located Fire Station 7 is. But we are hampered by the fact that there's not a pumper in that station. And I debated about which slide to show you first, and I thought the visual would be more beneficial before I got into the verbiage. But so the engines that surround Station 7 are 1 on Marshall Street, 6 on Academy Street, and 10 on Jonestown Road. And this peak demand reliability. So what that's telling you all is, during our peak demand hours, which is roughly from about 7 o'clock in the morning until 8 or 8:30 at night, those engines on Academy Street, Marshall Street, and Jonestown Road, when they have a call, they are only available to take that call 82 or 83 times out of 100, which is really not, we in the fire service, and this is an accepted standard in the fire service, we are looking for our units to be available 94 to 96 or 7% of the time, and when we're a long way from that. And you can see that we know this because before we opened Station 13, we put engine 13 in service at Station 7. So we called it engine 13, but it was running as engine 7. And you can see that it reduced the average travel time for engines 1, 6, and 10, the ones that surround it, by 2 minutes, over 2 minutes. That is a 20% increase on the cardiac arrest save rate. This is big. Moving on to the west side, we have not added any fire facilities on the west side of Winston-Salem since 1993. We have added them north, we have added them east, and we have added them south. If you can see my cursor, this is Muddy Creek, running up north and south on the map. This map is north up, and this right here is the Meadowlark corridor. And I'm going to roll forward and backward a few times and let you see what the growth looks like since 1993 along that Meadowlark corridor. Wrong way. This is 2023, 93, 23, 93, 23. And we have not added any fire facilities on the west side of town to account for this. So when you are at Jameson Park or Meadowlark, one of the Meadowlark schools, or any of these areas that run off of the Meadowlark corridor, your engine is coming from the corner of Country Club and Jonestown. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's not that bad of a run out there, 7 minutes or so, but at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, it's taking them 12 and 13 minutes to get out there as the first arriving suppression apparatus. Some data about that. One of the things that causes us problems is we have to get across Muddy Creek, and there's no street interconnectivity across Muddy Creek. You have to get across it either on Country Club, or you have to get across it on Meadowlark. You have to get across it on Country Club, or you have to get across it on Robin Hood. There remains, as you can see here, Brookberry Farm has 262 undeveloped acres out there that we expect them to develop, including 45 on the other side of where the I-73 Beltway is coming through. That creates further isolation for those addresses on the other side of the Beltway. And you can see here how many residential address points there are out there, including assisted living facilities. There are additional subdivisions already platted. The school is out there. There's a lot of risk out there, and we are a long way away. I think I have covered most of what's on this slide. So an engine on the Metal Arc corridor would reduce our average travel time for a first due unit out there by almost 5 minutes. And then you see, what is important to me here is, this data point right here, our getting the resources out there to properly address a cardiac arrest takes us over 10 minutes. It is accepted in the industry that for every minute past a person suffering sudden cardiac arrest, for every minute that passes, your chances of saving them go down 10%. If you do a little math, what this number is telling you is we're not going to save anybody out there who's in cardiac arrest if it takes us 10 minutes to get there. The last thing I wanted to bring to your attention today was what our public protection class is relative to our peers in the state. So one of the ways that fire departments are assessed is by the fire suppression rating schedule, and that is the tool that insurance companies use to set property insurance rates. So when you call and say, hey, I bought a new house, I'm in Winston-Salem, or I'm in Greensboro, I'm in Dallas, wherever it is, your insurance, one of the first things your insurance carrier is going to do is look at what the public protection class is for the fire department who would answer your house if it was on fire. 1 is regarded as the best level of fire protection, and 10 is regarded as no fire protection. And the way that score is compiled is our ability, or any jurisdiction's ability, to take a 911 call and process that call and dispatch units. That is 10% of 100 points. And you can see there we got 9. The last time we were scored in 2019, we got 9.4 points. The water supply, your hydrants, or your ability to shuttle water to a fire gets that's 40% of the score. And you can see there, we rely on hydrants. We don't shuttle water. We rely on hydrants for our water supply. We got 88% of the credit in 2019. And then the remaining 50 of the 100 points is an assessment of the fire department's capability. And you can see here, relative to what we got in communications and water, the fire department is well behind as a percentage in the portion of the available points that we were able to accrue. And generally, the 4 big things that the fire suppression rating schedule looks at is concentration and distribution of apparatus. That is, do you have enough of them, and are they in the right spots? Do you put enough people on those fire trucks, and are enough people turning out when you have a fire? Are you training your folks like you should be in the right subject areas? And do you have adequate tools and equipment? Enough hose of the right diameter and enough of it. And do your nozzles flow enough water? And all sorts of things like that. You get credit for fans and mops and the ability to control smoke and water damage and all of those things. I thought it would be interesting to look at so we are a class 2 fire department. And I thought you would be interested in seeing what the class 1 fire departments are in North Carolina. I've highlighted a few of them here in blue and yellow to bring those to your attention. I know that Burlington is not technically in the triad, but we count them in the triad because there's a group of chiefs that in the state that meet, and we refer to ourselves as the triad chiefs, and Burlington is included in that. But technically in the triad, Greensboro, High Point, and Kernersville are all class 1 fire departments, as are, and I've highlighted Garner, Faith, Kill Devil Hills, Wake Forest, and Wendell, because they are Class 1 fire departments that are not fully career fire departments. They are doing it with volunteer staff. Their combination, they've got some paid staff, but they are providing a relatively higher level of fire protection than the city of Winston-Salem, and they are doing it with volunteer staffing, which for a group like this, the role that the Citizens Budget Advisory Council plays, that would make me ask a lot of questions. I have Durham, so these are the Class 2 fire departments in the state. So these are providing the same level, relatively, same level of fire protection as Winston-Salem. Durham is highlighted because they are a Class 2. They just have gone through a pretty big consolidation effort in Durham County. The city of Durham is the only incorporated municipality in Durham County, and they have consolidated with some of the incorporated fire departments that are in Durham County. But ISO, the group that does the public protection class score, they are coming back this year, and Durham will be a Class 1 fire department. So they will be on that other slide. So that leaves Winston-Salem by far as the largest municipality in the state of North Carolina that is not a Class 1 fire department. But when folks like Cornelius, Limley, and Roseville, and Puppy Creek, and places like that none of you have ever heard of before are providing the same relative level of fire protection that is the city of Winston-Salem, again, it should make you ask a lot of questions. And this is the remaining slides. I highlighted Clemens, Louisville, and Piney Grove because they are here in Forsyth County. These are small combination, mostly volunteer fire departments, providing the same relative level of fire protection that we are. They're out of alphabetical order because the state has them officially listed as the Clemens, the Louisville, and the Piney Grove fire departments. And I didn't catch that until I had already built the slides, so I just left them where they were, but I did want to point that out to you. That concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions.
So Chief Mayo, I've got a bunch of questions, if I can start off. So we'll go back into those inspections. You say you have about 2,100 inspections behind. Just to get a sense, how many inspections do you guys do a year? Like, is that a year's worth of inspections, a month's worth, decades worth? I have no sense for this.
I'm gonna let Chief Brown answer that question.
So we are responsible for about 6,500 inspections per year.
Okay.
Our inspectors can handle roughly about 1,000 per year apiece, and the investigators, which have additional responsibilities, they can do about 600 a year.
Okay, so if you're responsible for 6,500 and there's 2,100 not done, you're like 6 months behind, basically, perpetually.
With adequate staffing, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the second question is, you mentioned about 1,600 R2 inspections never done. Is this a matter of sort of kind of making them low priority given that you're behind on other inspections, or are they going to get done eventually, or is this really just not a priority now since you guys don't have the staff to do normal inspections? I guess that's your question too.
So this predates me being in my position, but when that fire that Chief Mayo talked about occurred, it was always thought historically that we didn't have any jurisdiction over these properties. But with a closer examination, we realized there are some areas within those properties that we do have jurisdiction over. The reason why it has not been done yet is because we've added those inspections without adding staffing to accomplish those inspections. So we're still trying to maintain and catch up on our normal workload before we tackle those.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess the last question, well, two more questions, one of which is sort of simple, but what did I hear you right in that you said there's about 4,000 hours of accumulated leave per person? Or did I just mishear you?
No, that's correct. When you do that, when you divide in the operations branch, when you divide almost 1.4 million hours of leave on the books by the number of authorized staff in the operations branch, it's about 4,000 hours per person. That would be sick, holiday, vacation, special leave.
So I mean, what are you going to do with that? That's like 2 years of leave, right? I mean, are you just going to pay it out, or what? What are current plans for that?
A firefighter, because of the shift schedule, they work 2,900. Well, we've always said 2,912, but if you do the math, there are 8,960 hours in a year. If you divide by 3, that's 2,920 hours. So firefighters work 2,920 hours a year. So it's not quite as it doesn't get them off as it's not 2 years worth of leave.
But it's over a year. I mean,
one and a third year, something like that, 15 to 18 months. So the sick leave, they can use it toward retirement. So if they have 6 months of sick leave on the books, they can retire with full credit in the retirement system 6 weeks early. The vacation, it gets pulled down to a maximum of 30 days every January, and anything that they have over 30 days, it goes into the sick leave accrual. And then vacation just builds, and when they retire, they get paid out for vacation. I'm sorry, holiday. The holiday just builds, and when they retire, they would get paid out for the holiday and any vacation that they have accrued that hasn't been leveled down to the 30 days.
Fred,
okay.
I mean, a little context for that. We can go back and look at what the average employee has across that, but Chiefs, right? It's the sick leave accruals that tend to be very large for certain individuals at the ends of their careers. It is possible to accumulate enough sick leave to retire 18 to 24 months early and have that credited. There are folks who spend all their sick leave and don't have any and may have larger holiday and vacation balances. But if we were to show that kind of that list of things, it would be the sick leave bucket that is probably vastly larger than the rest of them. That may be a little different in operations, Chief. I know you've got some folks that spend it when they get it, but we could provide you some context as to what that looks like organizationally too.
Yeah, Scott, I was most just in the sheer number of hours, because it seemed like, is that a lot compared to other divisions in the city, or is that like, it's, as someone who doesn't accumulate leave, seeing 4,000 hours was just like a shock. It was like, wow, that's a lot. But is it a lot by city government standards? I just don't know.
I would have to go and run those numbers to be perfectly honest with you. I know the accruals are different on the fire side. I would, without getting too far into it, I would tell you it's probably a little higher in fire than it is in other parts of the city. But we can run those numbers and bring it back to you next month and let you know just kind of on average what it looks like. It tends to be higher for folks who have been here longer, that have a lot of sick leave that they are trying to accumulate for retirement. But it can vary greatly depending on what type of operation it is, but we can look at that. It is a very large number.
Last question for me is so you're looking at the fire insurance protection scores. So I noticed that while fire department capacity is by far the lowest, water was also kind of low, it looked like. Do you know the reason behind that?
Yes, in general, there are a few things going on. So water supply, there are 40 points available. We got 35 or 88%. There are areas inside the city limits that are more than 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant. And for those buildings, there are buildings that are over 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant. And that's one of the places we're losing a lot of credit from the water supply standpoint. The city's position years ago, and I believe it remains as the position. Let me back up from that. When the city had authority from the state to do involuntary annexations. In other words, they would look out at areas around the city, and once it met certain population density parameters, etc., the city would annex those areas into the city limits. If residents in those newly annexed areas did not want to connect to the city-county water system. The city-county water system, the city-county utilities did not run water mains out there and hence did not put in any fire hydrants. So those areas are speckled all around the city where the residents did not want to connect to city-county utilities. No water mains are out there, and as a result, there are no fire hydrants. From the fire chief's perspective, what we should have done is run the water mains and put in fire hydrants, and the residents wouldn't have been connected to the main, but we would have had the means of controlling fire out there. Because when you have a building that is over 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant, it creates an additional operational distraction at a fire to move water over that distance. I mean, we can do it. We have the capacity to do it, but it is not the same thing as having a fire hydrant in somebody's front yard.
Thank you.
Chief Wade, I know you've been getting ready for the next ISO inspection. Did you want to add anything to that answer?
No, sir, that's correct. It's those areas, mainly in the areas that have been annexed and those kind of things. We've got a couple places, like you said, sprinkled around. We're trying to identify all of those.
Other questions, comments, concerns for the fire chief or his staff? Chief Mayo, I will point you mentioned something in the last meeting and Fred followed up via email, and we'll try and get this information back. You had mentioned something about the cost difference for insurance purposes between ISO ratings for different types of buildings. And to that end, Fred had asked, was it possible to know for, I'm going to say, for a residential versus a commercial building, what is the difference in a premium for an ISO 2 versus ISO 1 inside the city if we were to move to that? I know that there are various ways to go about doing that. If you have a response to it now, that is great. If it's something we need to do some additional research on and get back to, we can do that as well. But Fred did ask that question.
I can answer that question now, and I feel good about my answer because when I was in graduate school, one of the projects I did was a cost benefit analysis of. I was working for the Raleigh Fire Department at that time. They were a Class 3 fire department. Now they're a Class 1, but the fire chief asked me to do a cost benefit analysis of Raleigh at that time, moving from a Class 3 to a Class 2. It has always been generally accepted that when a fire department moved below or better than a Class 6, that the residential property owner did not realize any benefit. The benefit from 5 to 1 was only realized by the commercial property owner. And it took me a while to figure out how to really make that, to prove whether or not that was true or not. And one day it hit me, almost everybody has a McDonald's. So I kind of finagled my way into figuring out how much the property insurance on a McDonald's restaurant was in various jurisdictions where the ISO rating was different. Getting it on a residential property is not that challenging, but getting a commercial property owner to divulge certain information, sometimes they're a little bit, they're a little bit suspicious about what you're trying to do. In the end, what I found was that when you go below 6, at each reduction in the rating or each improvement in the score, however you want to look at it, when you go from 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, it's about a 5% savings for everybody, residential or commercial, as you go down. So that is about what the savings is in going from each step, from one step to the down, to the next better step. I will tell you that there are some fire chiefs around and some city managers around who will tell you that commercial properties, particularly industrial manufacturing facilities, have chosen to locate in their municipality because they were a Class 1 fire department, because those manufacturing industrial type operations typically generate more calls for a fire department than, say, a retail facility. We are going to Ingredion, we went to Weaver Fertilizer, we go to it's actually in Colonelsville jurisdiction, but we answer it with them, the battery manufacturing place. I can't remember the name of it over on our east side. We are going to these industrial operations at an above average rate. And that having that Class 1 rating does play into the decision-making process when those industries are considering locating facilities in your jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Yeah, to Fred's point, I think that if we could get, and I think this conversation writ large would be even easier to have across the board if we had a little bit of an estimation of what those overall savings would be, right? If we could actually quantify that, then yeah, I think it becomes a much easier conversation to have in this group, but I'm guessing with a lot of the people who live in the city.
We do the insurance commissioner's office, the state insurance commissioner, they know how much what they call fire and lightning tax.
Yeah.
They know how much premium is paid in each fire jurisdiction in the state.
Oh, well, can we get that number?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, because in my thinking, if you tell me as a homeowner, hey, my taxes are going to go up, but my insurance is going to go down, I'm going to look at the net difference. If
Exactly.
taxes go up a bit, insurance goes down less, that's a win for me. If not, well, it's an offsetting savings, So that'd be phenomenal to have that number just to get an idea.
We will get it for you.
Awesome.
Fred, I will add to that. That works out well if that happens. But if it doesn't, this is an anticipated savings. And if you get a tax rate increase and it doesn't change, the other piece is the communication component of it. If y'all are looking statewide right now, they're talking significant increases to insurance. We would have to make sure that we were doing a very good kind of marketing campaign of, you might have expected your stuff to go up 20% and instead it went up 15 kind of thing. So there a lot of, after you did the benefit cost analysis.
Yes.
Explain it to people.
Yes.
Yeah. And as a part of that, I know that the Chief Mayo made the point that a lot of those savings are in industrial and commercial, those types of buildings or places that are zoned for that. So I think even being able to summarize that a little bit as a part of a comprehensive, even if it's marketing or if it's just communication, right? I think would be really helpful to be able to quantify a little bit more concretely.
Anything else for the fire chief? I will note what the chief has said today is reflective of his request, both on the operating and capital side when it comes to budget requests. The reason that we are here discussing this is because both last year and the year before, the chief had some of these requests. We had shown them to the CBAC and questions had arisen. And so from an operations perspective, when the chief showed you the gap in service caused by taking engine 7 out and having rescue 1 operate out of there without a suppression unit, or the gap that he has on what we'll call the western side of town in the Meadowlark area, there's a new station request that is in his capital request that is one of the highest priorities. We have also seen, obviously, how old the fire maintenance facility is, and the renovation replacement of that is also in line with the priorities in his capital requests. And so the chief is very much showing you, both on the operating and capital side, what are the priorities for his department as it relates to the needs and the ability to respond better and to provide for better services for his folks as well. I will say we've got one more. Chief, you are coming back next month for a shorter, just kind of talk about admin and bear program. I think we are on the schedule to do that. So we will have you one more time to follow up and answer any additional questions from this if they come along, and then chat quickly about admin and bear together to finish out the round of requests and positions and such for the fire department as a whole. Anything else, Chief, you want to add to the conversation? Otherwise, we'll let you go and we can approve some minutes and that kind of stuff and carry on.
I do not have anything else. I appreciate the opportunity. I'll ask Chiefs Hardison, Browning, and Wade if they have anything that they want to add briefly that I missed. And Sawyer, is there Sawyer?
I'm good.
I don't have anything. I'm good.
This is something good.
Yeah, I'm good also.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. You all take care. Good to see you again.
Thank you guys so much for coming, presenting today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you guys all for being here.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
So for the remaining members of CBEC here, as we discussed, we'll have the chief or someone from his staff talking about admin and BEAR, which is the behavioral evaluation and response team that we talked about actually last year, and as some of the ARPA stuff the year before as well. We did have, and I wanted to kind of get your feelings on this, and we may do a little research and then email the group. We had talked about potentially doing a I'm gonna call it field trip of some kind this year, to the extent that is possible. This group went and saw the fire maintenance facility down at Palmer Lane several years ago. You've seen pictures of it. I don't know necessarily that we need to do that again. We did recently open Fire Station 13, which is kind of, I'm going to just call it the southwesty area of town. There's a new fire station, and it has a nice meeting room. So we have the ability to do a station tour of one of the newer stations, have the chief show you as he's talking about moving operations around, what some of the bigger bay structures look like, where he can move both ladder trucks and engine companies in and out of, and increase that reliability a little bit that he talked about, as well as have that meeting on site next month if that's something that y'all are still interested in. Again, we only have a couple of folks here in the meeting, but we can also reach out to the fire chief and see if there's anything else that he would recommend as a potential site visit for you. Would just ask generally, are y'all still interested in doing some kind of field trip / site visit?
Yes.
Next month or the month after? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
It'd be great.
Ross is a yes. I see Haysetta shaking her head yes. Fred, are you?
I wouldn't be able to make it because I always have meetings immediately after this. But if you guys want to go without me, hey, no worry with me. I mean, but yeah, I wouldn't be able to make it.
We'll take some pictures for you, Fred. I see James Cena. Are you? Was that something that you would be interested in doing as well? I know she's on mute. May have us in the background. We will tell you what, we will talk with the fire chief and see what we can work up in terms of time and place, and we'll send out a feeler, see how that works out, and if we can make that work out, we will do that and potentially have an on-site meeting somewhere as well, so that you can kind of see things in person. We do have this one additional meeting with the chief coming. I've taken a lot of these notes. I will add there are places where we may come back after the series of these meetings with the fire chief and give you a little bit more of a budget history of some of the things that have taken place, particularly with respect to the inspections that the chief is talking about. This is something that was looked at 6 or 8 years ago. We used to do what are called company level inspections. So the folks actually on the fire trucks went out in addition to responding to calls and did inspections. We moved away from that and hired a number of inspectors and offloaded some of that workload to those new inspectors. The analysis that was done at the time showed that those 3 individuals that we hired should be able to handle that workload. And as you can see from the chief has provided, the additional 3 positions that we have added may not be to the level of what is needed. And so we are looking at doing a reevaluation of how many inspections are taking place, what is the workload capability of those people, and having to present that to the city manager as looking at what are the resources that are necessary to cover all of the state mandated inspections. So we have looked at this previously, thought that we had fixed the problem, and it appears that we may not have fully fixed that issue, but would be happy to provide you some of that original analysis and maybe what is different. Part of it, obviously, that they have the ability to do some of these inspections that they're not doing, and that's considered as part of the backlog. I know in the original analysis we did, those inspections were not considered because we were not doing it at the time. And as Chad said, we weren't aware that we actually had authority to do that at the time. So we will have to separate out those new inspections from what the original analysis was, but we'll show you that.
Real quick, Scott, I appreciated the point that in Fred's question that actually asked if there was a way to kind of, if they had a priority rating system or if it was just a queue by due date. As far as the resolving that backlog is concerned, I'd be interested if there is a way of ranking, for lack of a better word, those priorities to see kind of where the real measure of the backlog is, incorporating kind of those. I don't know if they're allowed to even do that, right, by law. I have no idea, but it'd be interesting to see if that's the case.
We can definitely work with Chaz and get you that. The level of familiarity I have with that is at the 30,000 foot level. I know there are certain ones that are required by state law. I think that they provide a prioritization for those, like the industrial one is more important than the manufacturing one that's a level below it. I think they just tell you you got to get it done on this schedule. But we'll have Chaz get you a response.
That was the assumption, but I never want to rely on.
Yeah. So Scott, just a clarification here. I got the impression that they were 2,137 inspections behind, and they had 1,632 R2 inspections that were never done. Is that true? Do we add them, or am I double counting there?
We will get those numbers directly from Chaz for you and make sure that they are pushed out correctly. I don't want to speak for the fire department. I haven't seen this data in a while, and it does change as they hire and have attrition in staff. But we'll get you that information directly.
Scott, can we get the slides of the chief's presentations from past meetings and this one too?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, we have those saved in our folder here. We can go ahead and send those out to you, Ross. We can get all that out.
Great.
All right. Other than issues, comments, or additional concerns relative to what's been expressed today, I believe, Janice, did we send out the meeting minutes from the last meeting? And how many folks do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we technically have enough to approve minutes from the meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to read them?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Any changes that anyone had?
Sorry, I vote yes. I was trying to unmute.
So, Fred, we will take that as a preemptive motion having been made to approve the minutes.
Second.
Hang on, one correction that periodically comes up.
Okay.
Did you spell my name right?
Did Microsoft Word do it again?
It did it again. It happens a lot. There's no I in my last name.
We got you. I can see Janice. She searches for this, knowing that it happens. Sorry about that, Fred.
I'm sorry, Fred. I'll try to make sure I catch it next time.
It's autocorrect. It happens.
It does. We will make sure we get that squared away. Other than the correction to Fred's name, assume that everyone is on board approving the minutes with no additional edits. Oh, if you'll say yes.
Aye.
Okay. And we had James Cena as well. That is 5 minutes are approved.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That is all I've got for you today. Like I said, we will talk with the fire chief and his staff about a potential site visit and relocating the next meeting, potentially to Station 13 or another area. If we find something that works a little bit better than that, we'll get some emails out as quickly as we can about that so we can get it on your calendar, knowing that won't be a virtual meeting, that will potentially be in person. Any other comments, questions, concerns that we need to address today? Otherwise, we will turn you over some time.
Bye, everyone.
Sounds good.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
everybody
Janice.
coming.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, everybody.